This short activity, and now we're back to the keynote speech. And our keynote speaker today flew all the way from the UK, and he actually arrived here yesterday along with Jonathan. So Piers Thurston is the owner of Making Change Work. Piers is an established personal development and business coach. He's an NLP trainer and facilitator. He's an experienced and expert trainer in coaching skills. He also designs and facilitates global corporate workshops in ideation, strategy alignment, and team development. There goes the corporate words. Clients include Unilever, Nestle, Ford, Coca-Cola, Tesco, and HSBC. Piers' topic is unlocking what really makes change work. Unlocking what really makes change work. Please put your hands together for Mr. Piers Thurston.
So, good afternoon. It's tough following a professional comedian, you know. Actually, you've set the bar really high. You know, I was thinking it's going to be the afternoon, you know, but this morning was just amazing. And just to echo what some people were saying earlier, it's a real honor for us to be here, for myself and Jonathan. And one, because your hospitality has been amazing so far. We've only been with you for sort of just 24 hours, but amazing hospitality. And also, from what I can see so far, there's such a bunch of open-minded, smart, and curious people that we're talking to. And it's great to be able to share some of the passion we have for change management with people like yourselves. So I kind of hope I'm right and you're going to be smart and open-minded when I'm talking as well. So that'd be very helpful. But thank you so much for inviting us here. It truly is an honor. So Jonathan and I work for Making Change Work, and we're going to do two parts to our presentation. So I'm going to talk for about 45 minutes now. We're going to have a short break, and then Jonathan's going to do something which continues the theme afterwards. And what I would invite you to do for my part is that it's going to be a little bit different to some of the stuff that we've done this morning, but at the same time be completely the same. And the reason it's going to be a little different is I'm going to ask you to be a little bit more reflective, okay? And just be curious inside to listen to some things. And hopefully that will enable you to have some insights. And insights are how we shift how we see the world. And in order for those to happen, sometimes it's nice to get a little bit quieter inside and to listen with some curiosity. And when you listen with curiosity, hoping to hear something new, then you can see something differently. So there's going to be times when I'm going to ask you to just go a little bit quiet and have a think, okay? And then Jonathan will do some more of the practical, higher energy stuff about how we actually apply this within organizations and within change management. Okay, so it's going to be a day of lots of different parts, but the theme is going to be very consistent. I'd like you to do something to start with. I just want you to spend 1 minute now just jotting down on a piece of paper, just in one sentence, any challenge that you face. Just one sentence. You're not going to be sharing this with anyone. Just write down something that's on your mind at the moment, and it can be a workplace one, it can be a personal one. It really doesn't matter what it is. Okay? I just want to spend 1 moment just writing something down. And once you've written it down, you can just forget about it, okay? So it doesn't really matter what it is. You don't need to share it. You can write whatever you want. Just a challenge that you've got right now about something. By the way, can you all hear me at the back? You can hear me? You can hear me over there? Because if not, it's going to be a little more boring for you, okay? So once you've done that, you can just allow that to go in front of you and just sit out the way for a moment. So, what are we going to talk about? Well, we're going to talk about what we believe truly unlocks change within organizations. It's the key to enabling change to be effective and sustainable. And it's going to play on the theme that we've been playing all through this morning. And we're going to talk about people. And as I was listening this morning, I was just jotting down so many notes about what I'm going to be saying is so relevant to what we've heard already this morning. But what I'm going to do is point to something a little behind it all, something that holds it all up. And once we see it from that perspective, it makes it a lot easier to work with it or change it. Okay? At Making Change Work, our specialism, our expertise and experience is all about people and change. Now, we work alongside the people doing systems and process, but we're all about the people. Now, I'm sure you're all familiar with the change curve. So on your training, you probably had this referred to you. Kubler-Ross, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who was actually a therapist, this curve's been taken and applied to organizational change. Is this familiar to you? Yeah? Okay. So there's different phases that people go through once change is being put into an organization. They might start off with some shock, and then they might go, well, it's not going to happen. I'm sure they won't do it. And then when it starts to happen, they get a little bit frustrated that it's different. And then they might even go a bit, oh, no, I don't think I can cope. What's happening? And then they'll start to experiment, decide, yes, this is the new way, and then integrate. And that's where the business benefit is. At the end there is where you're going to get the business benefit. And I guess what we're trying to do is to make people go through this curve as quickly as possible and not get stuck, particularly not get stuck in this circle here. Because not only is your change not happening, but the well-being and morale of the employees are going down. So we definitely don't want to be there too long. So we almost see that our job at Making Change Work is enabling organizations and people to get through this curve as quickly as possible. Okay? And to put it back into a model I know you've been using, the ADKAR model, in the awareness and desire phases of that, they come up with some resistors. And it's probably fair to say that they're all about people. So we're going to talk about what's underneath these resistors, how can we work with them to move them, and how can we get people through the change curve as quickly as possible. And the way we articulate it quite differently, change with our clients. We talk about there being what we call in front of the eye change and behind the eye change. Now, in front of the eye change is the tangible output of your change. It's your new system, your new process, your new business model, your new route to market, your new organizational design, whatever that might be. And that's the thing that you want, because that's going to either increase your revenues, decrease your costs, allow you to fit with regulatory, or whatever it is. That's the tangible bit that everyone wants. But in order to make that happen, directly or indirectly, that is to do with your people. And if you want that to happen effectively and sustainably, then we need to be looking at what we call the behind-the-eye change as well. And that is the change that happens inside each of us to enable that change to work. Now, we've been referring to this all throughout this morning. It's been coming up again and again and again. And whether it's the remedies of change, whether it was the self-fulfilling prophecy, whether it's about perceptions, we're just going to go a little bit deeper for myself, and then Jonathan's going to take it a bit more practical. So, behind the eye change is where the action happens. And whether we do that explicitly or implicitly, it's absolutely fundamental. There's a great quote here from one of the former leaders of GSK, GlaxoSmithKline, a big pharmaceutical. And he's saying, getting people to change one by one is the only way to change organizations. Now, that doesn't mean you have to do it individually to every single person. But if you don't get that mindset shifted throughout the organization, you are reducing your chance to make that change sustainable and effective. So what I'm going to talk about this afternoon is at a very personal, human, individual level. And hopefully, as we talk about it, you'll see how that's true for you, and therefore how it can be true collectively as an organization. So, that does beg a question. It begs a question, which is, what creates openness to change and innovation in an individual? What creates that? Now, I'm going to ask this. I'm going to ask you to answer this before I give you our take on it. Okay? So can we go to the control? Can we go to the handhelds? Well, you're going to get a screen like this for your handhelds. Don't press anything yet because, oh, here we go. So the question is, what creates openness to change and innovation in an individual? Is it, do you believe it's the incentives that are offered? So I'm going to get something, more money or whatever it is. The pressures that are applied, so the organization might imply some pressures. It's something to do with their past experience of change, whether that went well or not. Or maybe it's to do with their knowledge and skills in the area of change. Or it's something else. So if you can just put in, that should be 1 to 5, shouldn't it, yeah? OK, so if you can enter in 1 to 5, we'll see what you say. Whatever you think. $50 people? I'm sure we've got more than 50 here. 60. If you haven't done it, 5 seconds. Ooh. Is that enough? Do you think we've got, how many people have got in the room? We had more than that. One more? OK. Ah. OK. So about 40% of you think it's to do with the incentives that are offered. So if you reward people, then they're going to be more open to change. OK. And the second most popular answer was something to do with their experience, their past experience. Oh, no, sorry, it was to do with their knowledge and skills in the area of change. Right. OK. Now, bear that in mind as we go through now, because I'm going to offer you a different way of looking at this, OK? Because what we see around change is that it's an inside-out job. And what we mean by that is it doesn't matter so much what you do on the outside world to incentivize people to change or offer pressure for them to change. Because if they're not having the right mindset to change, that's not going to land on fertile ground. OK? So we're looking at change from an inside-out perspective. Now, it doesn't mean those incentives won't work and those pressures won't work, but they're going to be more or less effective depending on the mindset of the person you're working with. Now, I'm going to embellish this theme inside out a little bit further. So there's something we call quality of mind. OK? Now, just listen behind the words of this. But it's what we believe is the key factor in determining someone's openness, resilience, and effectiveness to change, and actually to create change. So not just be on a recipient of change, but to be open to the possibility of change. And we're going to talk about this term we're calling quality of mind, and what actually it is. And then later on, we're going to talk what can you do about it, or how can you work with it. And I invite you just to open your mind and listen to see what you're going to notice here about yourselves as we go through. OK, so what is quality of mind? Let me give you a little example. OK, so I was working with a senior director in an organization, large organization, you know, sort of 5,000 plus people, and they work in government in the UK, in London, and they're facing big changes, big transformation going on in local government in the UK because of our economy isn't doing quite what we want it to do, and so we've got some austerity coming on, so there's changes, so they're going to have reduced budgets. And the CEO said, right, we need to find some more money, we need to save some money, where are you going to find it from? And he put it out to his directors, and they all started pointing the finger at this one guy's department, OK? Sort of saying, well, I think there's some, we can get rid of some there. And he started thinking, believing them too, that maybe what he was doing wasn't the most valuable thing. And his boss wasn't really championing his cause. So I was having conversations with him because he was thinking, well, what am I going to do? You know, I'm getting attacked. It's open season on me right now. They're all pointing my way that I need to make some cuts. And he was starting to believe them, and that was oozing out of him. That was cascading out of him when he was talking to his team, and his team was saying, is it true we're going to lose our jobs? And he goes, well, I don't know. And he wasn't being a true leader. Okay? And he was starting even to have conversations with me about, well, do I need to get my CV, you know, my job spec ready? But I can't do that because the market's tough, and no one's going to want someone like me in this contracting market. He wasn't in a good place. He was highly stressed. 2 months later, and this was only last month this happened, 2 months later, he's been to the CMT, the board, with a business case to say, I need more money, more resources, because I am the leader of the department that's going to enable the transformation of this organization to happen. Because my department, with some tweaking, will have the right skills to take this organization forward. And I actually want more money in my remuneration package when this works in a year's time. Because he worked in the area of corporate risk and management, and he realized that actually inside his department he had all the skills for benefits realization. But for about 3 months, he just couldn't see that. And he was thinking, what can I do? What can I do to protect myself? And he was having quite big arguments with his colleagues. And he flipped around his mindset to go, actually, I'm going to become an owner and a creator in this situation. I'm not going to be a victim. And he created this business case, which is being signed off at the moment. So he's gone from having to potentially look for another job to having an even bigger job in the organization he's in, purely for a shift of mindset. Quality of mind is an individual, every single one of your individual innate ability to access higher levels of meaning, clarity, resilience, creativity, connection, and inside-out well-being. I'll talk about these as we go through. So the bottom two pictures here, that's sometimes how the world looks. Got so much to do, I'm completely overwhelmed. Help, I don't know what's going on, we're all running in different directions, no one's talking to each other. If this is a little bit true, just nod sometimes that life looks like this. Is it possible it can look like this occasionally? Yeah? And then some other times, it can be more like the top pictures. We're all working together, we're having fantastic conversations, we're feeling connected, and hey, we're being successful. Now, quality of mind is our right. Call it divine right. It's our universal innate right to have maximum levels of those things on what I've written up there. Meaning is all about connection to purpose, worthwhileness, clarity. Tell me, how often has it been the case where something's happened, it feels difficult, it feels overwhelming, it feels, I don't know what to do about this, help, 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 and you go and vent to your other half about it or whatever. You even send some emails off. And then later, you look at it and you think, oh yeah, I know what to do. And it almost appears like magic. I'll come on to magic in a moment. Resilience. Any organization going through change is going to need buckets of this stuff. And it's an inside-out job. Connection with others. Well, we've been talking about engagement all morning. Well, not all morning, but a lot of it. All about how do you talk in the right tone for the audience. When you're in a high quality of mind, you just do. Because guess what? It's a natural innate ability for us to connect with each other. I've got a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old. My 4-year-old can go into a new play group. Within 20 minutes, she's got a new best friend, and they're getting married. Hi. Off we go. Holding hands. Who's this? I'm thinking. Who's this? They can connect, right? And they're just smaller versions of us, but they're accessing the right kind of stuff. Inside-out well-being. I'll come on to that. Here's some typical signs, and I'm not being prescriptive here, of how quality of mind turns up in the workplace. On the left, we've got lower, and on the right, we've got slightly higher. Guarded and reactive versus open and proactive. I'm not going to read them out. Just have a look at those and see if you can spot yourselves or your colleagues or an organizational culture in there. And do you know what I think a great one on here is? Okay, and they're all fantastic. Wouldn't we like to be on the right-hand side of that all the time? Create from the known needs to fit with their experience versus willing to create from the unknown. Willing to go into that world of, I don't know, knowing something will come out of it. Because how often do we, all this wonderful diamonds of experience we've got on our head, and in some contexts that's really, really valuable, working from experience. I'm not knocking it, but there are times when we need to just park that, open our minds, and go with what we're going to create from the unknown. And the ability for people to work with ambiguity. Earlier you talked about cold feet. And that's often because people think, I don't know enough yet. It's not solid enough to move forward. Hey, if you can work with ambiguity and willing to create from the unknown, you don't need it to be solid. So, let me carry on. Because there's a question then, isn't there? Let me ask you, first of all, does it sound better thing to be on the right-hand side of this chart? Do you think that's going to accelerate openness to change and innovation? Yeah. So you might want to know, how do we get some? Would that be useful? So here's the question. What do our organizations normally do to get some more of that? And this is a question. Can we have it on the handhelds, please? So 1 to 6 this time. Maybe you think it's down to training and coaching. Well, we'll train and coach people to have quality of mind. Maybe just about making them aware of their personality, so they know whether they've got it or not. Maybe it's just about an internal comms job. Maybe we get quality of mind by improving the working conditions. Or we could just pay them to have some more. Or there's something else. Ah. Ooh. It's growing. Is that it? Ah. Okay. So about half of you are thinking training and coaching can enable quality of mind. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, quite right. I'm on the question ahead of you. Good. Good. Woohoo! See, I'm going to slide those in there, and you can catch me. Organizations will normally try and train and coach that stuff. And the second answer you gave was they might try and improve the working conditions and environment. Yeah? Okay. So let me point to where it lives within us, and then we can see whether that's the right answer or not. Okay? Oh, Control, can we switch back? Little clue, back to our inside-outness. Okay. Typically, normally, what do you want to call it? These would be the traditional levers that an organization would look at to try and leverage performance. So most organizations would get, okay, well, performance comes from individual behaviors, so we need to do something to behaviors to get them better or different. So they might do a lot of focusing around skills and competencies and knowledge. You have lots of training around that, am I right? Yeah? The whole department that we're sitting in right now does that. Okay. And then underneath that, we're probably aware there's something called our personality, our filters, our value set that we all have. And often an organization might enable you to be aware of that with some kind of assessment tool, the 360 type things, the psychometrics. Okay, so we can become aware of that. Now, I'm suggesting there's something underneath that actually holds all of that up. And sometimes organizations aren't seeing it. Or if they do see it, they don't know what to do about it, so they think you have to work around it. I'm saying let's work with it. And in this expanded view about what truly creates our performance, quality of mind sits underneath as a foundation to everything above that line. So it's not the same as mood. It's different. And I'll explain a little more. And that we all have this ability, on how we work with our subjective reality, that will influence everything above it. And we understand more about it, then we're going to be able to leverage the things above that line. But organizations often don't see it. And actually, it's even more than that. It's that once we truly understand where it comes from, we get to work with it. Now, I'm just going to spend just a moment distinguishing between a principle and a concept or a model for a moment. Okay? A principle is something like gravity, okay, which is completely universal, i.e., gravity doesn't treat you differently or you differently. It doesn't take a day off, gravity. Tuesdays, no gravity, right? And whether you understand gravity intellectually or not, it's still happening, right? So it's not like, 2-year-olds don't have gravity, and when they get taught at school, they go, right, my feet are on the floor, okay? And I can pretty consistently say, if I let go of this, I know what's going to happen. It's never not happened yet, okay? And I've been doing this presentation for a bit. So I'm going to point to the fact, and open your minds to this, because you feel free to disagree with me. I just want you to understand for the moment, okay? But this thing about quality of mind, the principles behind it are principles, not concepts and models that you can take or leave. So we're going to have a quality of mind whether we like it or not. However, just as with gravity, once they worked out, those clever people a few years ago, the principles of gravity and drag and thrust, they worked out how to get us to fly. Before that, the principles were still there, they just weren't understanding them, so we couldn't get anyone flying. And we kept falling off buildings when we tried. Flap, 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 it's not working. Okay? So by understanding the principles, you can work with them, and it can work better for you. Okay. Still with me? I told you it gets a little abstract, this. Yeah? Okay. So I'm going to point now to a little bit of, I'm just going to give you a little teaser about some of that understanding. Okay? And hopefully, by giving you pointing you in the direction of understanding, you'll see something for yourselves that is potentially massively liberating about how we can access greater levels of well-being and therefore performance. Okay? So I'm just going to point at something. And the reason this takes a little bit of pointing to and a little bit of listening to is because we've kind of been conditioned the other way round. We've been slightly misled as to what truly creates our quality of mind. And it's a very, very convincing illusion. Have any of you had that thing where you've had a close-up magician do stuff, okay? And you know that it's just a magician, okay? And you know there's some trick to it. But every time you do it, you go, oh. And even when they tell you how they do it, the next time they do it, you still go, oh, right? And the way we create our subjective reality is like that. It keeps tricking us. So, going to get Einstein in here somewhere because he's a smart guy, okay? So, 2 quotes. The major problems of the world are a result of the difference between how nature works and that way people think it works. And I'm going to hopefully try and move that gap a fraction closer. And Einstein said, no problem can be solved from the same level it was created. We need a different quality of mind to solve our current situation, because it was our current thinking that created it. So we can't go there for the answer, right? That'd be like looking under a lamppost for your keys just because it's light there, even though you left them inside. You're not going to find the answer. So, are you ready? I'm going to share a couple of principles. Number 1, our feelings come from our thinking. 100%. Now that's just words. But look behind those words. What that's saying is our external environment do not create how we feel. Sometimes it might look like this, that what happens in the outside world actually determines how we feel. Our circumstances, our events, the people, our relationships determine our level of well-being. So, if you come home and you walk into your house and the ceiling has collapsed, you go, ah, I love that light. Oh, look at my carpet. What's going on? I can't have my party on Saturday. Oh, I'm in a bad mood. It can look like that, yeah? If something terrible happens to us in the outside world, almost sometimes it looks like it's mandatory that we must feel bad. And society will tell us this. It keeps telling us this. What I'm suggesting is something a little different. Well, not actually a little different, completely inverse. Just get a little bit, I'm going to go a little abstract even more just for a moment. Our brains, the way our brains work, this implies our brain's a camera. And what's going on out there, we take in and then we respond to it and how we feel. It's not. It's more akin to virtual reality. Our brain is constantly creating and perceiving our subjective reality. It is constantly making up our experience. There is a live data feed, i.e. the outside world. There is one. I'm not saying this chair doesn't exist. But I can quite easily go inside my head and think about lying on a beach in Australia, and the chair doesn't really exist for me in that moment. It still exists out here, but it doesn't exist for me. But our brains are so good at not showing that we're creating and perceiving at the same time. It does it so simultaneously that it looks like it's coming from the outside. We've got this special effects department in our head called our consciousness, a special effects department that Hollywood would love. And we're so good at making things look like they're coming from the outside straight in. They're not. If they were, every single one of you would have the same experience whenever they came across something in the outside world. Now, I know some people love dates and some people don't. I know some people love brown cars and some people don't. And not only am I talking about different people here, I'm talking about us. So we can come in and see our ceiling falling down and go, oh my God, what's going on? Help! It's raining in here. And then later we can look at it and think, huh, I kind of always did want to redo the ceiling anyway. And I've got insurance. And while we're doing it, let's do the walls. And nothing's changed in the external world. You change your quality of mind. So, our experience is being created inside our brains at the same time as we're perceiving it, so simultaneously we don't notice. So actually, a more accurate model is this. It's not our circumstances. It's not our circumstances creating our feelings. It's our thought. And when I say thought, I don't just mean those cognitive conscious thoughts you have, okay, the ones you're actually aware of, because we know we have a thing called an unconscious or a subconscious. That's creating our feelings too. We're just not aware of them. But it is still us. And it's a closed loop, the bottom there. Nothing can get in that loop. So, do you know what this means? You're like this. Having a stressful job is impossible. Technical impossibility to have a stressful job. Why? Well, because it's technically possible to have stressful thinking about our job, but our job itself is not stressful. It's only our thinking about our job that's stressful. Because two people can have the same job and one can be really stressed and one can't. And you can do the same thing at the beginning of the week and the end of the week on the same job. So it's not the job. But the world tells us, oh, changing jobs is stressful. No, it isn't. Our thinking can be stressful. This may sound like a bunch of words, but when you insightfully see this, and what I mean by insight, you inside see this and you realize it, it's hugely liberating because your attachment to what needs to happen in the outside world goes down and your quality of mind goes up. When your quality of mind goes up, your ability to access all those wonderful things like resilience and creativity and connection with others just innately happens. When we're down in low quality of mind at the bottom here, our level of consciousness makes it look like the outside world is doing something to us. It makes it look like what's going on out there is real. When we're at the top there, it doesn't matter. So let me ask you a question now, just inside your minds to reflect. And I'm sure you can all probably relate to this. A time when something hasn't gone brilliant for you in the outside world, okay, and then later on, it was okay. Actually, it was fine. And actually, it was probably one of the best things that possibly could have ever happened, yet nothing has changed in the outside world. Just nod if you've experienced that. Yeah? Sometimes when that happens, we don't even give ourselves the credit. Oh, well, I think the other person got better about it. Oh, I think, blah, blah, blah. I found, things like our bank balance, we're very good at doing that. So bank balance is on the outside, right? So there's a number there. And sometimes we can look at that number and go, oh, well, that's not big enough. What am I going to do? My wife wants more money. Blah, 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 blah. My kids want to go to university, whatever it is. And it can create some feelings for us. And other times we look at it and go, oh, that's okay. So, number 2, if this is all about thought, if I'm saying the source of our experience is always our thought, then it might be useful to know where does it come from. And what I'm going to suggest it comes from is ourselves or the wider universe, the formless energy of the universe, and it's always on offer. It's always possible to have fresh thought about something. It's always possible to get into high quality of mind. We're only ever one thought away from high quality of mind. One thought away. Nothing needs to change in the outside world for you to get it. You just need to see it. Bing. It's like when sometimes you wake up in the morning and you've been having a dream, and for the first minute or so you still think you're in the dream. And then you go, oh, it's just a dream. Whew, I'm glad. Guess what? Same hardware and software that's creating that can create the thing in the waking life. We just don't conditionally think like that. So, it's available to do this. Linked to number 3, which is a self-regulating system. I.e., there's nothing we need to do to access this. It's in here anyway. We've been looking for it all over there and going on retreats and whatever. It's inside. And let me show you how I know this is true. My 2-year-old, quite keen sometimes on tantrums. We know the tantrum? So we'll go to the shop. He'll want to play with everything inside the shop. He'll pulling it off the shelf, and I'm going, you can't do that. I pick him up, move him. He gets, for about 4 minutes. Guess what? How is he 2 minutes later? He's fine. He's better than fine. He can't even remember having a tantrum. And you're saying, you really need to behave. And he's going, what? Why? Because he has the tantrum. He's in low quality of mind. He doesn't think himself. He doesn't do any thinking about that. He just goes, and then he's back again. If you cut your finger, what do? You don't have to talk to... No, you're going to have to heal now. Come on, you're making me look bad. Will you hurry up? We've got a timeline on this. You let it heal. We allow our physical bodies to heal using the kindness of the system. We have that mentally and emotionally available to us as well. If we understand the system. If we understand the principle that that happens, we don't overburden ourselves with thought. If we overburden ourselves with thought, it plunges us down into low quality. If we let the system get on with it, it's a self-regulating system, like our 2-year-olds do, because they don't know they don't need to do that yet, right? They just do it intuitively. No one's taught them, when you're 2, you do this, when you're 10, you do that. They just work with the system. But we get conditioned out of that by our over-reliance on the outside world. Just checking time, because I talk too much. Okay, so let me just nutshell this. Now, this is big, big, big stuff. And if you just get that much, then hopefully you might be open to see something. Our quality of mind comes from our thoughts, nowhere else. The only thing that makes our quality of mind go up and down is us, our thoughts. It's not our events, our outcomes. It's not our other half. It's not our boss. New thoughts are available at any moment in time. High quality of mind is available to us in any moment of time if we understand that's where it comes from. The system's self-correcting. And here's something I find liberating. The worst thing that can happen to us, ever, is just a thought. And if we don't like that one, there's going to be another one along in a moment. That's just the nature of thought. It comes along. It's transient. It's formless. And if we let that one pass, another one will come along. And if we allow the system to do its job, it will be a better one. So, I want you now just to glance back down to that piece that you wrote and ask yourself, just inside your head, and what do you know now about that? That challenge you wrote down on a piece of paper, what do you now know about that? It's just a thought. And I don't know how many of you might be having a higher quality of mind experience when they're looking at that going, huh, that? What was I writing that for 10 minutes ago? That's what my 2-year-old could do if he could write, okay? So Jonathan's going to take us a bit more of a practical explanation of this. How long have I got? About 4 minutes? 2 minutes. Good. All right, that's what I wanted. So in 2 minutes, quality of mind is the key determinant for acceptance to change in organizational performance. It is often invisible. Therefore, we overlook it, or we think it's fixed and we're going to have people in a bad mindset because that's just how they are. Or the self-fulfilling prophecy kicks in. It's hugely pervasive. When people's quality of mind goes up, not only does work get better, everything gets better. And it can enable competitive advantage because people will outperform their training, outperform their skill level. When people are on high quality of mind, they're on flow. They just get stuff done. And we can talk about it with, the way we use it with organizations is sometimes we explicitly talk about it like I am with you now, help you see a little bit of the understanding. We don't tend to do it in 40 minutes. We tend to do it in a few days over a period of time. Or we implicitly use it, which is what Jonathan's going to show you, of how we use it in change without having to explain exactly what it is. So the last slide I'm going to show, which Jonathan's going to be the first one he's going to show, is the recipe for how we really think change works is enabling people to have a quality of mind that gives them all those things, and a sound business case, of course. Okay, I'm not saying that doesn't exist. But the key part of the behind the eye change for us is this quality of mind and how people can access that. Now, in my last 20 seconds, I'm just going to invite you for kind of the rest of your lives to just be curious about what I've talked about this afternoon. Because I know from experience that it can be massively liberating when people insightfully understand where their well-being comes from, when they realize it's an inside-out world, not an outside-in world. I'm not saying the outside isn't important. I'm not saying the outside doesn't have an effect. But it's not what causes it. Okay? So we're going to do some questions at the end of Jonathan's bit as well, unless I've got 1 minute for a... Have I got 1 minute for a question? Yeah.
And you want to improve their quality of mind. What do you do? I mean, is that where awareness comes? Like,
well,
yeah. Awareness will improve the quality of mind of the people, or there's another tool or technique?
So explicitly, we would then talk to people about the understanding I've really quickly talked to you about this afternoon, and they'd see it for themselves, because this is an inside-out thing, okay? So when people see it, and they work with this in prisons, in communities with lots of crime, when people see it for themselves, everything else changes by itself. So there's no tools, because tools just get in the way of thinking. And we also use it implicitly, which Jonathan's going to demonstrate a bit later. I don't know whether that answers your question. So do you have another question now, or is it time? Time? Okay.
And then Jonathan's. Yeah.